What kind of technology do you think already exists, but the government is keeping a secret? Story 1. Even stealthier planes, as proven by the fact that no one knows about them. This feels like a Douglas Adams plot point. Planes so stealthy that even the GovT doesn't know they exist. Once the pilot is taken off, he gets lost by everyone, including himself. This is, of course, a terrifying experience for the pilot and the GovT. The contractor has an equally terrifying experience finding a different project to cross-charge the billing to. As the stealth plane's fuel eventually runs out and the plane crashes stealthily, the resulting stealth smash and stealth explosion are almost invisible to the naked eye. The state of Arizona was almost entirely lost due to the stealth fires created by stealth planes crashing, until the insurance companies had to start paying out too many stealth losses. This is widely regarded as the second greatest stealth tragedy of all time. The first, of course, being the silent migration of frogs from France's eastern seaboard to the British border, Story 2. I don't know about the specifics of anything, but I'm pretty confident that anytime the DoD announces some fancy new jet or whatever, they're giving us old news. There's already an even fancier, higher tech jet flying around they don't want us to know about yet. The development time on new military vehicles, be they fighter jets or tanks, is so long that, yeah, most of the time when you get the completed product in the field, it's 20-year-old technology. That's not the case for all components. Not all individual components will be that old. Things like radars or missiles it utilizes will often be newer, since different technologies develop at different paces, but a lot of aircraft or vehicles will be 20-year-old designs. My dad always told me growing up that it's a pretty safe bet that whatever the military is showing you, they have something 20 to 30 years more advanced that they're not showing you. Story 3. Fun fact. During the late 1950s through the late 1960s, more than 50% of UFO sightings in the USA directly correlated to top secret U-2 and A-12 or SR-71 training flights. People who reported them to the Air Force through Project Blue Book were given explanations that it was Venus or whatever. Blue Book personnel would pass the sightings on to the CIA, who were running those programs, and the CIA would try to match them up to the top secret flight logs of their surveillance aircraft. More often than not, they got a hit. They didn't inform the Air Force about it, though, because the Air Force didn't have a need to know. So even USAF pilots who saw something were given a far-fetched story. Story 4, it's very specific, but the utilization of AI to not only create, but actively develop synthetic online communities indistinguishable from those organically created by humans. So to be clear, this would be a single program that they can take a platform, Facebook, then Twitter, etc., create or activate multiple bot accounts that near perfectly resembles those of genuine humans, which follow each other and provides engagement to each other, and then begins taking prompts from a small network of inner circle accounts that will guide the direction of the rest of the swarm. So in action, 5 accounts may post some variation of, "I can't wait to see Taylor at the Super Bowl today." And 20 accounts will all use their pre-configured parameters: liberal, conservative, black, white, migrant, citizen, etc., to generate posts, and then begin to reply to each other's posts based on their own parameters. It'd be weighted so that bots with similar parameters engage with each other more often, creating their own social media bubbles. Then, over time, more and more bots join the swarm. A more primitive version of this has already appeared on Twitter recently. But I fully believe that there are likely entire sections of various social media platforms where not a single human has interacted with any of the bots. But if they did, it would appear indistinguishable from normal human interaction. It's just little pockets of the dead internet. And I also believe that this is 100% motivated by state and corporate actors as a way of controlling media narratives. Story 5. Everyone knows about the Bletchley Park efforts to break Enigma during World War II. Less known is the fact that the US government kept recommending countries use Enigma-similar encryption for the next 20 years after the war. In 1992, the NSA charged the creator of PGP with export of a controlled munition when he released the code on the internet. In 1998, the Clinton administration announced they were removing all export restrictions on RSA, the key system used in PGP. Either, one, the cat was out of the bag and there was no point in stopping someone, corporations, in the US from using this technology with branch offices outside the country, or Two, the NSA has found a relatively fast method of breaking RSA key pairs. Tinfoil hats are for sale in the lobby for fun $15. Story 6. I wouldn't worry about governments as much as huge for-profit multinationals. Remember that northern Italian town whose inhabitants have a genetic anomaly that not only prevents arterial plaque from being deposited from a rich, fatty diet, but whose physiology actively removes any that it finds in the bloodstream? Yeah, me neither. Strange that in this age of expensive cardiac treatments and medications, such a far-reaching and potentially simple to implement treatment has never been rolled out. Story 7. To be honest, a lot of it is kind of dull. By the time whatever thing is finally declassified, it's anticlimactic. Like, oh, yeah, it makes sense that we had that back then based on what we could go out and buy. I mean, the F-22 started development in the 1980s. Science fiction is having to work harder and harder, verging on fantasy at this point, to get past the edge of possibility. There was a Wired magazine article a while back that listed the top 5 or 10 most likely methods of successful time travel. The phrase that stuck with me was the math checks out, which means that viable time travel is now just an engineering problem. That line ended my sense of wonder with science fiction. I've always felt science fiction is less about the science and more about the humans interacting with it. One of the better portrayals of sci-fi, at least in movies, might very well be Deja Vu from 2006. The scientists claim to have a massive data processing system that let you see anything that happened anywhere 4 days ago, and they use it to try and solve a murder. Only it turned out it was a cover story for a wormhole, and they were streaming actual visual data from the past. The cover story is vaguely believable for the time, and keeping something like a wormhole secret is probably a good idea for the near future, but they still try to do good with it. Yes, it's a test, but it's done in such a way that makes sense for how humans might actually use it. Story 8. All the UFOs we see. I think we have large swarms of assault drones that will revolutionize warfare. That's why I think we walked so casually into conflict with Russia. Either we slowly bankrupt them, or they escalate to where we get to play with our new toys of destruction. Either way, we defeat Russia, we flex on China, we make the richest Americans richer. The military-industrial complex celebrates 50 more years of blind eyes, unlimited funding, and unparalleled destruction. It's a win-win-win-win, am I right? Except for the millions of Ukrainians and Russians that will die, the poorest will get poorer, and American exceptionalism will go untouched for many more decades. There's those things. Story 9. Well, we need to remember that some weird crap that would normally be conspiracy theory has actually taken place, like psychic abilities. Declassified documents have shown they may not have been as ineffective as we thought, and the true results of this test were never released. It is known that these tests were done. It is known that they lied about stopping. What is not known is why they did not stop and if they were really ineffective. It's easy to brush off the common perception of what a psychic is. Yet on a scientific level, it is possible that certain things may be possible, just not in the way we commonly believe. New technology shows how well we interact with technology, electricity, and other frequencies and waves. We can send and receive. There's a reason they kept testing. And as a normal person, I do believe in the power of the secret. Yes, a self-help book about believing it into existence. Is mind control really, can they be read, manipulated, controlled? Do we need a device to make this happen, or do we always have the power and just need to unlock it? Something fun to think about, and something that could be backed with known science to a point. Would like to see the real result of the test, as you can't trust Aunt Sally when she says she can tell you the lotto numbers. But I'm sure we have all had moments of prediction, knowing the next song to play on the radio, knowing there will be a knock on the door, correctly guessing what should not be guessable. Maybe it's something, likely not, but fun to think about. Story 10. Not as much as people probably think. The idea of keeping something totally secret these days, with virtually everyone packing a camera with them at all times, seems less likely. This isn't even accounting for things like loose lips and satellites. I suppose you could keep something secret if you buried it beneath a mountain and kept everyone involved locked in. I'm sure that there are secret things that are mildly interesting, but nothing like the grandiose stuff some people are saying. Reddit has a decent amount of people that truly believe we are regularly visited by aliens, so not surprising. Story 11. You know those supercomputers that countries like the US and China and other nations keep building and keep trying to one up each other with? Yeah, so they say those computers are used for nuclear calculations, but I think that's utter crap. We have and have had really solid data on nuclear explosions, nuclear propulsion, and nuclear fission for power plants for quite some time. This falls into conspiracy theory territory, but I think what they are actually using those computers for is, in combination with AI, to simulate society and how it responds to world events. I think they scrape the internet, mostly social media, and they create digital people and personalities. They simulate a person based on their online profile. How would this person spend their time and money? How would they vote, etc.? Now, you run that simulation, but with like 300 million simulated personalities, and you see how they interact. You see how they react to different scenarios, such as war, economic events, law or policy changes, climate events, etc. I'm sure there are other legitimate scientific uses for these supercomputers as well, but I'm not for 1 minute buying that they're mainly used for nuclear calculations. Story 12, fusion. Just think about how critical oil is for the US economy and our influence across the world. A source of cheap free energy would be a worldwide upheaval of the status quo. All these scientists keep predicting fusion is possible, and yet every time they build a machine, it just doesn't quite work. I'll bet that each facility is handled by men in black suits who tell them they're allowed to do all the research they want, but they're never allowed to actually succeed. There are probably several fusion reactors humming away in secret underground bases right now, either powering weird military stuff or acting as backups in case the grid ever goes down. Story 13. I remember reading about a breakthrough material that was lightweight, soft, flexible, heat resistant, that could be applied to walls, engine compartments, etc. Very thick that had the sound reduction ability of 3 of reinforced concrete. I'm sure that was an exaggeration. It was in process to be added to cars to reduce on engine noises and road noises for a quieter ride, and to enter into architecture for quieter housing, apartments, condos, hotels. The last time I did a dig to find out about it, the company rumored to have created it had been bought out by the US government. Story 14, subconscious messaging. There are chemical stimuli that we can't perceive consciously that nonetheless stimulate certain parts of our brains. If you smell the sweat of someone who is fearful, it stimulates your amygdala. If you smell the sweat of someone that exercised, it doesn't. This happens even if you can't consciously perceive a difference between the two scents. These same criteria probably exist for hearing, sight, and tactile stimulation. It also probably exists for stimuli we can't consciously perceive, like non-visible light and radio waves. Of course, being drowned in these waves for a century now has probably completely disabled most of our ability to perceive signals from other humans, which might have something to do with the collapse of fertility in modern societies and the benefits of being in nature. We also likely have some subconscious capacities that seem like magic. Our brains combined with our sensory systems might be capable of a type of quantum entanglement with other beings. Basically, love. All of these bits of knowledge, along with manufacturing capacity, would enable some terribly evil things like love potions and induction of mass panic by exposing people to specific chemical, visual, audio, and radio signals, as they could slip right past their conscious defenses. Children, especially, would be vulnerable to this, which is why TikTok, YouTube, Gotcha Life, and all other digital media should be illegal until the age of at least 18. Story 15. My guess? Anti-ICBM weapons that are at least 80% effective, covering the entire continental US, South Korea, and the English Isles. They'd be really easy to set up as either directed energy weapon prototype things or SAMs to shoot down drones, and then say to contractors, oh, these are going to be used to shoot down planes. And they won't realize it unless they get a call from someone who does know. Hey, by the way, that system that can shoot down advanced planes, we put on your border for like no reason and cost a gazillion dollars? Yeah, it doesn't just shoot down aircraft, it destroys nukes. Story 16. I remember in the early days of Google, they hosted a series of videos or talks about various topics. One of the topics was this company that developed a special laser and camera that mapped its surroundings and could form real-time video of things around corners and inside of buildings. They showed a scenario with hostage takers inside a building. The developers went into the problems they faced and had to produce their own microchips that could facilitate the speeds they needed to process the data. Over the past decades, I tried several times to find the video, but haven't found it since. Story 17. I don't know who possesses this technology, but I know that it exists, and I think I understand how, to a degree. Myself and a friend were stargazing when he pointed and asked, "What's that?" It was an aircraft that was flying in an unusual way. I focused, and immediately as I did, it launched away from the planet at an amazing speed. It didn't go to the side, to and over the horizon. It went up, 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 and away, disappearing into a pin dot in the middle of the sky like a rocket that was launched to space. So I got to thinking, I know what I saw. I'm a rational individual, and I trust my senses. I didn't imagine it and had a friend with me who saw it too. So, how could someone do this? How could someone be flying a spacecraft around, having a good old time? But the moment I take notice of them, they nope the heck out. The gold slit experiments demonstrate that light behaves in a different way when it's observed versus when it's not observed. The mere act of observation can collapse the waveform and cause it to become a particle. A sufficiently advanced system could broadcast a light that they indirectly observe whether it's behaving as a particle or a wave, without directly collapsing the waveform themselves. As soon as the waveform collapses, they know they're being observed, so execute the GTFO maneuver. Think how useful this could be as a piece of body armor. It won't protect you, but it tells you when you're invisible and alerts you as soon as you're not. Story 18. A guy I used to work with was in the military through the 90s and early zeros. He talked about how at one point his job was to call in fire missions or airstrikes or whatever. He described the device he used as a tablet which displayed a top-down view battlefield map, like a video game minimap. Yeah, just like Call of Duty. It showed all the friendly assets and also enemies. He said he'd tap whatever friendly chopper or plane he wanted to talk to, then tap whatever enemy position he wanted them to hit. They'd confirm with each other. Then it was done. When I pressed him on it, one of the things he said was that it had pinch to zoom behavior. That implies a multi-touch display. In the 90s. Some of the stuff he talked about makes me think that the military has stuff for about 20 years or so before we start buying in from Apple or Google or whoever. Story 19. An effective response to nuclear missiles. The threat of mutually assured destruction is so effective because each side expects to be destroyed, so they have no reason not to retaliate in full. However, if word gets out that you can stop nukes, then you'll still have something to live for after a nuclear attack. Your enemies might think you'd hesitate to retaliate in full force. Surely you'd save some munitions to deter other countries that may attack you opportunistically. However, if you keep it secret, not only can you stop nukes, but the threat of Maddie still deters war from happening in the first place. Story 20. Things that make the virus seem like the common cold, bioweapons that could potentially wipe life out. And I heard of actual weather control technology existing. There is already a kind of weather controlling system out there. Example, making artificial clouds, raising temperatures in an area, evaporating large volumes of water to create rain ECT. It is possible there are things like wind and tornadoes, earthquakes and tsunamis, besides setting a nuke off in the crust of a volcano or a vault, which is random if it would work. Technology developed for space warfare. We know a lot of NATO governments have been interested in this field. Satellite weapon systems, ground-to-space missiles, man-held weapons designed for zero gravity that can end a man without damaging a station or ship in orbit. Story 21, Cloaking Technology. A family member of mine did the majority of the cloaking work that went into the B-2 stealth bomber in the 90s. Got several awards for it. The stories he would tell me as a child about the kind of tech he saw while working would blow your socks off. Cloaking technology, as you'd imagine, has been a thing since then, if not earlier. However, think a lot less Halo and more Harry Potter. He described a blanket littered with micro cameras under a flexible OLED display blanket, which was, in his words, very effective cloaking. I recently got an Oculus Rift and let him try it. His first question was if the game he was playing was on the Unreal Engine, because the last time he tried something like that, it was with the military as they had made tours of the bases for VR, which newcomers could use to get to know the layout. He claims the consumer tech world is 20 to 50 years behind the military. But the tech always comes out to the private sector eventually. Story 22. I believe that time traveling exists, not now or even in the near future, but at some point it does exist. So, with that being said, we can say that time travelers may have visited us at some point in disguise. Maybe not at this point in history because there's nothing pertinent going on right now. Time travel may be a very real thing, but doesn't exist for the exact reason you believe proves it doesn't. If time travel into the past were created, the overwhelming need to return to the past to correct wrongs would surely take hold in a person's mind. Changing the past would then change the timeline that led to the creation of the device, assuming it's a device, and immediately erase the creation of said device from the future. So, in reality, at the exact moment of conception, it would cease to exist, along with everything that led to its creation. But then, with the timeline leading there, then being changed, the device would have never been created in the first place for this to happen. It's a paradox. Your life may only exist because of someone who changed the timeline in this way, thus removing the ability of time travel from our current position in the timeline. Or it may exist but to someone who has not returned to the past and changed history. In reality, for any device to exist and continue to exist past the moment of the conception is if it is somehow capable of separating itself from existence altogether, removing itself from time so it wouldn't cease to exist, or be able to undo any changes it has made while it sits in some sort of idle state outside of the timeline. Quite interesting when you truly think of what it would take to make a time machine work outside of the obvious need to design and create one in the first place. Story 23. As the conspiracy theory rabbit hole goes, there is a theory that we have obtained a lot of technology from reverse engineering alien equipment. As this theory goes, if it is not a win-win-win, the technology is suppressed. What I mean by that is, it has to be implemented and profitable without disrupting current business structures and institutions. The most interesting by far is a device that can scan you, diagnose any illness or disease, and treat it. They say the medical industry was so against it because it would ruin their business that it has been permanently banned, so to speak. I never thought too much about it being a crazy theory, but after watching what these guys have done to maintain control over the last several years, it wouldn't surprise me if it did exist. The medical industrial complex isn't really there to help us. They are there to maintain the status quo. They have done everything in their power to keep it a business in the US. They have done everything in their power to make self-treatment illegal, from attempting to ban CBD oil and kratom, the mysterious deaths of rivals in Canada. The list goes on and on.